Well, hey, you guys, welcome to the Connection Point Worldview podcast. My name is Ron, your host. I'm here as always with Pastor Trey Shigley and Dr. Zach Breitenbach. They make up our Worldview department at Connection Point Christian Church in central Indiana. And this is a podcast that's helping just kind of bolster your faith and process areas of the Bible or tough questions of apologetics that might help you, your students, family, or friends. This is a Burning Questions edition, which means we've been submitted some questions that we're trying to work our way through and give just a few minutes of thoughtful biblical answers to help you in your faith or maybe answer a question that a friend has in your life. So, Dr. Zach, what's the question you've got for us today?
Yeah, this is a very common question, a very good question. It says, my little brother died at 6 months of age, even though he was too young to have made a decision for Christ. Will my brother be in heaven? So this is getting at, of course, like what is the fate of young children or infants who die, who maybe haven't even lived long enough to really even understand the gospel, to really understand anything about Jesus, that sort of thing. And the Bible doesn't speak to this as directly as we might want, but I do think there's some things that the Bible says that, some principles that would lead me to be very confident that these babies who die will not be condemned for their sin. I do believe they're saved. So here are some reasons, some principles I would take to lead me in that direction. One is that these infants or very young children that die are too young to have really committed any sins if they're really young, like 6 months, like this person's brother. And the Bible indicates that we're punished for our own sins. And it emphasizes we are not punished for the sins of our ancestors. It says this repeatedly in the Old Testament, in Ezekiel 18:20, Deuteronomy 24:16, Jeremiah 31:29-30, 2 Kings 14:6, and then in the New Testament, Romans 2:6 and 2 Corinthians 5:10. So this is a teaching that you see throughout the Old and the New Testament, that we are responsible for our own sins. We may well inherit a sin nature.
That's what I was going to just clarify.
A tendency to sin, right? And if we all live long enough, we inevitably will sin. And the Bible says all of us have sinned and fall short of God's glory. And I do believe we have a sin nature and we all will sin, and that's biblical. But I don't think it's right to say that we inherit the guilt. I personally do not believe that we inherit the guilt, because there is this repeated teaching throughout the Bible of you are responsible for your sin. You're not punished for the sins of your ancestors. The Bible also says that sin is not counted where there is no law. It says that in Romans 5:13. Infants lack the capacity to understand the law or even have a conscience that could convict them of sin. The Romans earlier on says that even the Gentiles who don't have the written law are still guilty when they sin because they violate the conscience and the moral law God's put on their heart. Well, babies, like the 6-month-old baby, they can't sin. They don't understand anything. They can't even speak, and so I don't think the law is going to apply to them yet, because they're not old enough to have broken it for themselves. I think there's that principle. And then also, people will often cite something that King David said. He seemed to think when his infant son died that he would see his son again, that his son would be saved. And we read about that in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 22 to 23. So he says, well, my son has died. He's not coming back to return to me, but I will go to him. I will see him. So he believed he was going to see his son again, at least, who died as an infant. So based on those biblical teachings and the fact God is loving, God is just, I'm supremely confident, even though the Bible doesn't speak to this as directly as maybe we wish we would have that answer. But I do think infants will not be condemned in the afterlife.
Would you apply this kind of same logic or principle to those like maybe mentally disabled or handicapped.
Yeah, that could well be too. If someone is so severely handicapped that because it doesn't take a lot to be able to understand the concept of doing wrong and needing Jesus, and Jesus died for you. But if someone is so handicapped that even though they live to be fairly old, they can't comprehend that, I think that would apply to them as well.
Awesome. Well, please know if you're listening, any of you have lost a child, gosh, we're certainly grieving along with you. We'll be praying for you. Even if it was a long time ago and you process this sort of thing, it can bring back those memories. And we're just here. If you need any help, feel free to reach out. Another good question, guys. God bless you. Well, if you've got questions for us, head to connectionpoint.org/worldview. Click on the questions tab, and then you can submit your questions right there. If you have other needs, connectionpoint.org is a good starting place to get more information about the church. And in the meantime, a couple of things. Would you mind sharing about this podcast with a friend? Maybe give us a review too, as that helps people find us. And please know, in the meantime, we'll be praying for you and your family. God bless.